And what a weekend for the Phillies. That was a roller coaster ride. Eagles are back in training camp starting tomorrow. We will get to all that and more coming up this hour. Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press joins us coming up in about 20 minutes from now. As always, you can join the conversation at 609-403-0973, just like George in Summers Point has already chimed in, or you can DM the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Before we get to the before we get to the football stuff, I do want to start with the Phillies because this weekend was an incredible realization that the Phillies obviously are in their own heads. To me, there's no other explanation for the way they're losing some of these games recently than they're just overthinking or something at the plate, because it just feels like when you watch this team, you're expecting them to play better. Like the way they played yesterday when they won in the 10th inning, that was the kind of game you expect this team to win. But this is now 2 straight Sundays that the Philadelphia Phillies have won in extra innings. In between those 2 extra inning wins, the Phillies have won 1 game and lost 4 games. The total runs scored in that 5-game stretch, the win they had on Tuesday, and then the 4-game losing streak to the Brewers and the Guardians, the combined runs that they had was 12 over those 4 games. 2 of those games, they were shut out. In the 2 extra inning games, which totaled 22 innings, they scored 15 runs. It's obvious that the roller coaster ride is getting out of hand. At some point, the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde act has got to stop. And I don't know what the explicit answer is for that, because to me, it's not going to get any easier. You got 3 home games coming up against arguably the hottest team in all of baseball, the Baltimore Orioles. If the Atlanta Braves are the best team in baseball, the Orioles are either second or third. The Orioles destroyed the Marlins, had 2 very close, interesting games with the Dodgers, beat the Rays 3 out of 4 games recently. That's what they've done. This Orioles team is talented, they're young, they're fearless, and you have to see a former Philly tomorrow night, Kyle Gibson, who's like their main veteran pitcher in their rotation. He's going for them tomorrow night. So, look, I look at this as a very interesting opportunity to get yourself right on track. I don't think the Phillies can sweep the Orioles at home. I think the Orioles are too good for that. But there is a chance you could win tonight's game because the Orioles are coming off of a 4-game series with the Rays. Their bullpen is depleted. And realistically, it's not like the pitcher you're going against is some dominant force of nature. Most people have no idea who Dean Kremer is, but Dean Kremer is a 10-4 record with a 4.80 ERA. He is the perfect example of if you catch him on a bad day, you can get him. He actually was a better pitcher statistically last year than he is this year. But this year, he's giving you a little more, okay? He's not some elite strikeout pitcher. He's not some dominant pitcher. He's just a guy who pitches well enough for his team to win games. That's who he is. So, in theory, you could win this game tonight. But the Phillies aren't putting out their best lineup out there tonight. It feels like they're sitting their entire team for a day. I guess traveling from Cleveland to Philadelphia and playing about 25 hours apart from end of one game to the next game is just too much for these guys. Note the sarcasm in my voice. I think it's ridiculous. Look, I understand you don't want Harper to play first base every day, but why is Stubbs and Harrison and Rojas all playing? Is JT Realmuto, Alec Boehm, and Brandon Marsh really that beat up that they can't play today? Seems a little weird to me. Not a fan. Tomorrow night's match is going to be fun because it's Taijuan Walker versus Kyle Gibson, the guy who the Phillies let walk and the guy they replaced him with. And then Wednesday's game, Ranger Suarez versus Kyle Bradish. Now, Bradish is a very good pitcher, and that's going to be the game that's probably going to be the lowest scoring of the three games, in theory. Bradish, he's having a very good year. He's got a just over 3 ERA. He's one of those young pitchers that the Orioles have developed into a bona fide starter for them. So that's probably going to be the game with low scoring of the three. So big challenge for the Phillies this week. They got to get that figured out. Got to get that figured out at some point. 609-403-0973 is the text board. George in Summers Point, who chimed in at the beginning of the show, chimed in. He says, Josh, I heard your conversation with Mike Gill earlier. There are many players in the Baseball Hall of Fame who are there based on defensive prowess, including Brooks Robinson. I think the Hall of Fame always valued defense, especially if it was way above what the level of competition was the time the player was in the majors. George goes on to say, I'm sure there are a lot of other old-time players before our time that were there strictly as defense as well. My question is to you, do you think that players are strictly great offensive stars with poor to fair defensive skills should not be in the Hall of Fame as well? George from Summers Point. What George is talking about, for those who didn't hear, so we were talking about how Scott Rowland is basically in the Hall of Fame because of his great defense. Scott Rowland was not an elite offensive player. He was a good hitter. He was not a bad hitter. But to me, there was always two things that went against Rowland as a hitter. The first thing is, for a guy who played a premium position like first base, he has a career 281 average and 316 home runs. So he was not some dominant power hitter. He was not some elite player in that category. When it comes to the RBI, you have to go through that 7 of his 17 years, he had at least 92 RBI. So his offensive numbers were good, but they weren't great. Now, I understand where you're coming from, George, and so much point, that the idea is that there are defensive players who are in the Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame values those things. But I think the problem is that you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. The problem with the Baseball Hall of Fame is that it's voted by a group of people who look at it very subjectively. They do not have a keen eye for objectivity, these baseball writers who vote. There's a guy with more Gold Gloves than Scott Rowland. There is a guy with more home runs than Scott Rowland, about 100 more home runs. And this guy also had 7 seasons with at least 92 RBI. This player has 10 Gold Gloves to Rowland's 8. That player is Andrew Jones. If the Baseball Hall of Fame, George, and Summers Point really cared about defense, Andrew Jones would be in the Hall of Fame. I have to say, I think that your perspective on this is a little wrong because I think that the Baseball Hall of Fame, it's voted on by a group of people who hold biases and grudges. Jim Rice took forever to get into the Hall of Fame because the baseball writers didn't like him as a person. You know how ridiculous that is? That's literally the only reason why people didn't put him in. And the thing with Andruw Jones is he was an elite defensive player, better offensive numbers than Scott Rowland. Not in the Hall of Fame. In fact, his most recent voting output, according to Baseball Reference, he got 58% of the vote. The year before, 41%. The year before that, 33%. Well, 33.9%. The point being that, George Summers' point, I understand where you're coming from, but I think that there is a level of mystique given to the Baseball Hall of Fame that I don't think is warranted. I think the Baseball Hall of Fame is a flawed entity. And I think that it's, frankly, a very flawed institution overall. To me, if Scott Rowland gets in, then you have to put Andruw Jones in. Because what you're saying is, if defense matters, if defense is so important, what about a guy with 10 gold gloves? Oh, that's right. That doesn't fit the narrative. Scott Rowland's a nice guy and people liked him. By the way, Andruw Jones led the National League in home runs and RBI. Scott Rowland never did that. Andruw Jones had back-to-back years with 128 RBI. That's crazy. Scott Rowland never did that. Scott Rowland, 8 gold gloves. Andruw Jones, 10 gold gloves. Just something to think about out there. Over on the text board at 609-403-0973. Texture says, Josh, I'm not buying this Tommy fan talk. Dave Dombrowski is going to make a big multiplayer move. If history is any indication, he's going to make a major upgrade, not just improve around the margins. By the way, I've been saying Stott should be a leadoff hitter since May. If anyone disagrees, then I don't know what you've been watching all year. Well, anonymous texter, I got to tell you that, first of all, the Tommy fan part, look, this time of year, there's always rumors. I try not to read too much into those rumors because they're just rumors. But I don't know where you get this idea that Dombrowski has this large history of making deadline trades. Because if you go back through his years with the Tigers and his years with the Marlins and his years with the Red Sox, most of his big deadline moves, like in 97, it was Darren Dalton. With a team like the Tigers, the deadline deal was guys like Omar Infante and Aníbal Sanchez. With the 98 Red Sox, it was Steven Pearce. Now, all 4 of those players I just named had major roles on those teams, but they were not major upgrades on the surface. Darren Dalton was a huge leadership piece and a major contributor for that Marlins team, especially because they're the DH when they go going against the Indians. Because Dalton struggled to play in the outfield at that point because of his knees. Sanchez was a huge key to that starting staff that already had Justin Verlander in Detroit. Steven Pearce was a good outfielder / first baseman who had the greatest postseason of his life and played out of his shoes. So I think that the indication history says that he doesn't make major acquisitions at the deadline. He makes acquisitions that work around what his team needs. And then to your point about Bryson Stott, listen, you've been saying that Bryson Stott, if anybody disagrees, well, the person who disagrees is the Phillies. Dave Dombrowski and Sam Fold and Rob Thompson disagree. So argue with them. They'll argue with me because I'm just telling what the lineup is every day. They believe that Kyle Schwarber needs to be in the leadoff spot, and that's why he's starting there. So you can take that case up with them. Good luck with that. All right, coming up next, we'll get back to the football talk and get more text a little bit later in the hour. 609-403-0973. That is the text board. You also can DM the show to the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. NFL Talk next. Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press.
You haven't downloaded the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app? Well, go get it now to follow all the Philly sports teams at 97.3ESPN.com. Powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Your luxury BMW experience is closer than you think. Take advantage of exceptional savings at BMW of Atlantic City. Stop in and shop your favorite models, including the new BMW 2 Series, X3, and more. We're sure to have a vehicle that fits your needs. And with Acceleride, purchase your vehicle online and we'll deliver it directly to you. Looking to trade? We'll pay top dollar for your current vehicle. Experience luxury today at BMW of Atlantic City, closer than you think, in Egg Harbor Township. Shop our complete inventory online at bmwatlanticcity.com.
Hey, this is Josh from 97.3 ESPN. If your air conditioning isn't keeping you cool, or if you're worried about sky-high electric bills, I recommend you call Jenkins Plumbing and Heating today about a new system from American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning or a Mitsubishi ductless system. Take advantage of financing of up to $15,000 from South Jersey Gas or Atlantic City Electric. New AC system can save you 25 to 35% on your AC bill. Call Jenkins at 609-641-6440, online at jenkinsandsons.com.
Hi, we're Comparion Insurance Agency. Right now you're thinking, Comparion? Never heard of them. We know. We also know that you have no idea that Comparion Insurance agents are local and provide expert advice. So to help it stick, we're going to say local agent 4 times in the next 15 seconds. Ready? Go. Our local agents know you and your community. Our local agents offer insurance from top carriers. Our local agents have minty fresh breath.
Find us at ComparionInsurance.com. Comparion Insurance Agency. Local agents, expert advice.
And there's number 4.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC. Equal housing lender.
Ray Magliozzi here for eBay Motors. Okay, easy now. You're teaching your kid how to parallel park. Ouch! Turns out he likes to do it by feel. Don't worry, eBay Motors has bumpers, taillights, trunk lids, license plate holders, 122 million parts. Pull up just a little bit. And headlights. They've got lots of headlights. Get the right parts at the right prices. eBay Motors. Let's ride.
Hey, it's Mike Gill. Experience a culinary journey like no other at Trio North Wildwood. Chef Gus Zimmerman creates mouth-watering dishes that showcase the freshest ingredients with something for everyone, including gluten-free options so that all can indulge in the wonderful cuisine. From their juicy pork chop to their savory crab shrimp cakes, every dish is prepared with care and precision. Book your table on Resi and experience the ultimate casual fine dining experience at Trio North Wildwood, 700 New Jersey Avenue, North Wildwood. Chef-driven, quality-focused, TrioNW.com.
With GMF financing to qualify by excludes or that excludes fire sales.
This is it. The time has come for Bennett Chevrolet's biggest sale of the year. Bennett's Summer Sell Down Spectacular. First off, you get Bennett's exclusive GM supplier employee pricing on new Chevys. Yes, you pay what we pay, not a penny more. And unlike many other dealers, Bennett doesn't charge over MSRP. In fact, you can even get a new Chevy at thousands below MSRP. And there's available 1.9% financing. Looking for used? Our selection's never been better. Right now, Bennett is paying a record $10,000 minimum for any clunker towards any pre-owned in stock. That's a minimum 10 grand for any rat trap, any way you can get it to our lot. Imagine how much we'll pay for a good trade. Plus, Bennett Chevy's non-commissioned sales team is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. So there's never any hassles or pressure. July is jumping all month long at Bennett Chevrolet during our summer sell-down spectacular. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
And the free mobile app.
We'll get back to the baseball talk coming up in just a bit. Right now, we're going to switch over to football, although he does very familiar with baseball as well. Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press, lead NFL writer, joins us right here on a Monday edition of Game Night. Josh Hennig hanging out with you, and Rob joins us on the Elite Acura hotline. Rob, how you doing today?
What's up, Josh? How are you, man?
Doing pretty good. Are you tuned into the latest baseball Hall of Fame this year, or are you kind of unplugged from that at this point?
I voted, so I kept up with that part of it, but I did not. I know they had great, a lot of rave reviews for Scott Rowland and Fred McGriff's speeches yesterday, and I do at some point hope to listen in because ever since I started voting, I think it's been about 10, 12, maybe even 13 years. I remember Andre Dawson was the first. Whatever year he got in, that class was my first year voting.
Gotcha.
I try and listen to those induction speeches because it's a pretty cool thing, especially to know, like, you were part of it just in a little small way. And I do want to get to listen.
Well, the reason I was bringing it up is because we were talking about before you came on about Scott Rowland getting in and how his resume doesn't have the same offensive volume to it as some other guys do. And, the position is, hey, guys can get in just for their defense. And my perspective, Rob, was, well, if Scott Rowland can get in, fine. Then I'm waiting for Andrew Jones because Andrew Jones has more home runs and more gold gloves than Rowland does. So if we really care about defense, Jones to me has to be in.
Yeah, Andrew Jones for me is a guy who was deserves strong consideration. And you look at, like, when you talk about defense, Ozzie Smith got in for defense, right? Mostly, but Scott Rowland, he had some pretty good offensive numbers. I mean, sensational offensive numbers. He had 31 homer season, 26, 26, 25, 20, 22, 28, 34. So he hit some home runs. He was part of some really great teams in St. Louis too as well. I think Andrew Jones is a guy who at some point eventually Josh will get in. When I looked at my ballot, and I've consistently had this problem because it's been loaded, and I've always thought the guys who have been implicated with the steroid allegations and that's kept them off were worthy of getting in. So I continually vote for Alex Rodriguez and Manny Ramirez and Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens when they were on, and even Palmeiro when he was on, and Mark McGwire when he was on. And that prevented me from taking – I'm always a 10. Like, you get a 10 max, I'm always right there because I feel like there's 5, 6, 7. Curt Schilling this past year, not steroids, but other reasons, kept him off. And that's always kept me – like, I vote my first 10. And then I look at guys like Andrew Jones and wonder at what point will the ballot open up enough to where I can give him even stronger consideration. But he was one of those guys who was he was a defensive wizard, and like you said, can hit some home runs, can hit offensive star power. He kind of faded quickly. He came up when he was 19. Remember the 2-homer World Series game against the Yankees? And he faded like in his 30s to where you would have thought he could have been like a rock-solid first ballot Hall of Famer. But that obviously hasn't been the case.
Rob, let's jump over to football. I want to get into this with you because over the weekend on Faith on the Field, you spoke with Jalen Hurts last week. And I wanted to ask you, because I was on the air here on 97.3 ESPN on Saturday and Sunday morning, was there like a major or a standout takeaway for you from your conversation with Jalen Hurts?
For me, it's just Jalen's demeanor and his approach to everything, Josh. The way he handles winning, the way he handles losing, the way he handles getting the biggest contract in NFL history, even though it only lasted a couple of weeks until that was surpassed.
Right.
Whatever it is, like he's just an all business mindset. He's all in, all about getting better. And it's funny, man, because I did that interview with Jalen. Actually, it was a couple of weeks ago, and then they put out little quotes here and little quotes there, and then saved some of it for Faith on the Field, which reminds me to get that one out there too as well. So thank you for that little nudge. But he's a guy who, no matter what, since day one, I felt like always said the right thing. You never like look at Jalen and go, man, I wish he would have handled it this way, or I wish he would have said this. It takes the blame when he needs to. Is humble, doesn't take any of the credit, even though a lot of it is on him. And I get in a lot of interviews. I do a lot of interviews on radio, whatever, across the country, and people are like, you think Jalen's going to take a step back from last year? And I'm like, what makes you think Jalen Hurts is going to take a step back? Nothing in his DNA, nothing on his resume tells me he's going to take a step back. Everything I've seen from him as a player is he's going to take a step up. Like, I still don't think he's hit his ceiling. I still think he can get better. He thinks he can get better. He's working to get better. His coaching staff believes he can get better. So why do people want to put that like, oh, is Jalen going to take a step back after a tremendous year last year? Well, is Patrick Mahomes going to take a step back? Is Josh Allen going to take a step back? Is Joe Burrow? No, you're not asking those questions. So why is Jalen? Like, people were so surprised by him being an MVP contender, a finalist, finishing second to Mahomes, and all the success he had last year, that some folks, I feel like, want to write it off as it was a fluke season. And I just don't see that for Jalen. I think that he can, with more time in the offense, with more weapons around him, with whatever the Eagles can do, I think he can still get better.
It's interesting because I think a lot of that has to do with, perception becoming reality with Jalen, Rob. I think it's the attitude that because he doesn't fit the mold of a Joe Burrow or a Patrick Mahomes or an Aaron Rodgers, he doesn't look, quote unquote, the part. He doesn't act the part in some ways. I think people have a bias against him. Whereas, for example, a guy like Josh Allen, he has Brian Daboll, loses Daboll, his turnovers go way up. You have a guy like Aaron Rodgers last year, you remove Devontae Adams from him, he looks like a average to above average quarterback, but we don't judge them harshly because there's a built-in, I'll call it, bias for those guys, whereas I think Hurts is still fighting that perception.
Yeah, and I think that definitely is part of it. You're right. And people look at him being drafted where he was a second-round pick. He wasn't expected to have this kind of success. He wasn't the number one overall guy. He doesn't have the pedigree or the college resume, although he was very successful, right, of Joe Burrow. And then he's not doing what Mahomes has done in terms of winning the Super.
Looks like we lost Rob Maaddi there for a moment. We'll try to plug him back into the stream there. He just froze over there. So hopefully we can get Rob Maaddi back in here on the Elite Acura Hotline. Josh Hennig hanging out with you guys here on a Monday night here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle. We'll try to reconnect with Rob here in just a moment here. Try to see if we can link him back up here on the connection. But, back to the Hurts question. I think part of the reason why I'm seeing a little bit better what's going on with Jalen Hurts. I see it a little differently because of the fact that, I'm watching that quarterback show and there's something to how you view people. I think we got Rob back now on the connection. Rob, part of the reason why I was asking you what I was asking you is because of the fact that, there's a perception of a lot of these guys. And I think Jalen has been, for lack of a better term, hurt by the fact that, when he was at Alabama and when he was at Oklahoma, he was perceived as this mobile quarterback and this guy who was only a runner. And I think that, it's an unfair thing because guess what? We do the same thing with Kirk Cousins. We treat Kirk Cousins like he's not a good quarterback when almost every year he has 4,000 passing yards.
Yeah, and I don't know when you lost me or when I zapped back in. Power outage here in Florida. I gotta love the summer rain, man. It's great. Goes in. Little summer rain knocked me out, but I
a
think
little
that is
bit.
part. Yeah, just a little. He's such a he's such a valuable running back quarterback who can run the football for the Eagles. Who was their leading rusher, 2 years ago? Not last year because Miles Sanders had a big season. That I think is a somewhat held against them. Like you said, people look at that and go, he's a running first quarterback. But I think Jalen should have shown people how successful he can be as a passer last year. And the addition of A.J. Brown obviously helped him tremendously. Devontae Smith. And I think Devontae takes another, he's still growing. He's still learning. And A.J. second year together with Jalen this year. And you got to see how those pieces and all of those weapons surrounding him help him. But to look at him and to write him off as like, all right, he just had a fluke of a season, or he was great, but he'll come back to life. He'll come back to earth this year, I think is foolish. And I think it's from people who don't watch the NFL that closely, or just want to see him fail, or don't want to see him. And I think, Josh, also, there are some folks who, listen, when he was drafted in the second round, I think that not the majority, but the overwhelming, right, consensus in Philly was the Eagles didn't need a quarterback in the second round. They should have went out and helped Carson Wentz and got somebody else in here who can help. And maybe they didn't need to do that. And we've all been proved, anyone who said that has been proven wrong. And you make mistakes in the NFL, whether you're Howie Roseman with draft picks, Jalen Reagor, or whether you are NFL talking heads, analysts, writers, reporters. You should be willing to admit it. Hey, I was right there saying, nah, the Eagles should have drafted someone else. They didn't need Jalen Hurts. They didn't need a Taysom Hill. They didn't need a backup quarterback. They needed someone else at this position who can help Carson Wentz, who's going into the first season of this contract extension. Well, I was wrong. I'm willing to admit it, and I'm not going to sit there and hold on to hoping that Jalen Hurts fails to make it look like you're wrong. If you said that, he already led him to a Super Bowl. So you were incorrect in that part of your analysis of the football team, and just own up to it, and don't think that the kid's going to take a step back to make you feel better about any of your analysis 2 or 3, 4 years ago, whatever it may be. I think Jalen now. There may be other issues, right? They got a new offensive coordinator, but it's somebody he's familiar with. That's why I think it'd still be seamless. Teams may have certainly more tape and more film and more ideas on how to go after and attack this innovative, creative Eagles offense. But don't you think the Eagles are going to counter that too as well? So that's
Rob Maaddi, the AP Lead NFL writer, joining us here on Game Night on the Elite Acura Hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. Rob, I want to switch over and ask you about what's going on with some of the guys heading in the training camps here. Which situation do you think is more tenuous? Is it Chris Jones with Kansas City, who, by the way, Chris Jones, for those who don't know, he didn't just not show up for training camp. He didn't show up for the ring ceremony that the Chiefs had. You know, Saquon Barkley threatening to hold out and not play this year. Obviously, he says he doesn't want to do it, but he feels like he might have to. Might be the only leverage he has. Which of those two situations is more complicated to you?
I still think Chris Jones is, even though, Chris Jones is subject to $50,000 fine per day too, whereas Saquon Barkley isn't getting fined because he didn't sign his franchise tender. I still think that the Chiefs are motivated to do something with Chris Jones. His cap hit is right around 28, 29. It's astronomical, Josh. So they have motivation to work something out with him. Whereas with Barkley and the Giants, they can't work anything out. They could technically give him a 1-year deal for more than the $10.1 million franchise tag and load it up with incentives and whatnot, but they can't give him that long-term extension that he wanted. Now, he's not getting fined for missing or holding out in training camp. I don't think he's going to go the way of Le'Veon Bell. Even Le'Veon Bell said recently that he wishes he had not sat out that whole season with the Steelers. He's got Saquon and Josh Jacobs have nothing to gain and only money to lose. I believe at 561,000 per game clip once they get into the regular season. That's money they'll never get back. So they can't hold out. As angry as they are, as frustrated as they are, as resentful of the organization and how they handle things, no matter what it is, they're going to have to eventually show up to get paid because there's no recourse. We know that the top running backs got together Saturday night. They did the Zoom call. Nick Chubb from the Browns said it best yesterday. He's like, it's a difficult situation, and there's nothing that we can do about it right now. So if he comes out of that Zoom meeting and he says that there's really nothing that we can do, we're kind of handcuffed with this situation. Our production hurts us the most. If we go out there and run for 2,000 yards, the next year they're going to say you're probably worn down. I don't think they solved anything. Like, all those guys are getting together and they're talking. The teams have all the leverage. You can complain and be angry and bitter as much as you want. And I'm not taking the team side. I'm just saying they really have no other recourse right now. And eventually I think Saquon shows up. But I think there's more bitterness with that situation. Chris Jones wants his money, wants to be paid like the highest paid player, defensive tackle. Eventually I think they'll work that out.
Now that Josh Harris is the owner of Washington, do you buy into the speculation they might change the team name again?
I kind of think they might. I do, because was it Magic who said Magic Johnson?
Magic Johnson, yeah.
Was part of the owner. I think he was the one who said that that's something that we'll probably look at next. That's not a top priority for them. Their focus right now is on, all right, the season's right around the corner. Let's make sure we can put together the best product out there. But they're trying to repair that fan relationship. Fans turned on the Snyder family and their ownership and that entire regime, and the experience in Washington going to a game is terrible. The stadium sucks. It sucked for media. It sucked for fans. It's terrible for everybody. You never know if you're going to get raw sewage dumped on you, or if a railing's going to collapse, or whatever.
Right.
Like, whatever it is. So I think they're working on, as Josh Harris outlined in that Friday news conference, their top 3 priorities is getting the team ready to win, making sure they improve that fan experience, and getting people to buy in and want to come back. Now, I think they got an extended honeymoon period, Josh, because he's not Dan Snyder. So anything other than people are going to be excited about, people are going to be happy about. They had the pep rallies, and they're all going crazy now because they're finally rid themselves of the Dan Snyder. The league certainly is happy. They've rid themselves of that headache, but I don't think it's going to be an easy fix. They got to figure out what they're going to do with that stadium, how they're going to get a new one, how they can improve that experience, if they're going to have to play there for a few more years until they figure out where they're going to go, who's going to build it for them, how they're going to build all that stuff. So it's still a long, tough, difficult process, but I do think that they're going to have a little bit of a longer leash from that fan base because they're excited that it's somebody new.
Well, it also helps when Josh Harris calls 106.7 The Fan down there and tells the whole brewery and the host he's going to buy them all beer. So,
I think he can pick up the tab like a few times over.
Yeah, I think he'll be okay. I don't think it'll hurt his bank account too much.
No.
Rob, one more before I let you go. Which quarterback situation do you think needs to be talked about more? Is it the San Francisco situation with nobody really knowing who's going to be the starter? Or for you, do we need to talk more about the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo just coming off of an injury, playing for a Raiders team that kind of looks like they're directionless?
I think San Francisco, because they're a winning team with Super Bowl expectations. The Raiders, with or without Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't think anybody anticipates them being a Super Bowl team or looks at them as even being a playoff contender. Even though Jimmy's been a winner throughout his career, I just don't see him impacting the Raiders that significantly to where they get to that point. Now, he was cleared to open training camp with the Raiders. His foot and all that stuff is fine. That's great. To me, the bigger question mark and the bigger storyline would be the 49ers. How's Brock Purdy progressing from his elbow injury? what's Trey Lance look like now going into year 3, because they spent a ton of assets to move up to get Trey Lance, and that certainly hasn't giving them any kind of return on their investment. He's been hurt. All of that stuff has happened. Who's going to take control? We know Brock Purdy's healthy, what he can do last year, 6-0 up until the NFC Championship game. And I think they feel like he could be that guy. But you invested a lot in Trey Lance, and I don't know if that they're ready just yet to move on completely from him while Brock Purdy's getting his health back together. So I think it's going to be an interesting training camp, San Francisco, that whole situation, to see how these two guys are coming along. And of course, they got Sam Darnold there too, as a backup third string, whatever he ends up being as well.
I would laugh if Sam Darnold starts week 1. I would just laugh. I mean, is there anything more Kyle Shanahan be like, oh, well, Brock Purdy's not fully recovered yet, and Darnold beat out Trey Lance,
Yeah, if Sam Darnold starts and they win, like, I might finally have to hop on that Kyle Shanahan train too, and start giving him more props. But I'm not there yet.
Listen, I'm not going to sit here and act like that one ranking that Kyle Shanahan, number 2 head coach in the league. I can't do that, man. I think he's a really, really good football coach, but at some point, there's a lot of other really good football coaches too. At the end of the day, to me, I think what you saw, for example, from Doug Peterson last year, winning with Jacksonville, like, to me, winning in multiple places, I think, has to have some sort of value. I think that's what elevates Andy Reid, is that he did it in Philadelphia, then he won in Kansas City. No offense to Kyle, but it's like, dude, you've been involved in 2 pretty eye-opening Super Bowl losses, and what have you done since? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that bothered me a lot when I would look around and then I go, it's just some people's opinions and who really cares. But when they're ranking their coaches and you're putting coaches like Shanahan or whoever maybe who hasn't won a Super Bowl ahead of Doug, what you exactly said right there. 1, he's won a Super Bowl. 2, he takes over a Jacksonville team that was absolutely garbage. Number 1 pick 2 years in a row, had that whole Urban Meyer debacle. And he leads them to not only the playoffs, but a playoff win with an incredible come-from-behind win. People need to put more respect on Doug Peterson's name. He wins a Super Bowl. He goes to the playoffs multiple years in Philly, and he goes to Jacksonville. And, oh, by the way, a dreck of a franchise that hadn't had a winning season in forever except for 17. Not much, just a losing franchise, and he turns them instantly into a winner. And everybody's all over Kyle Shanahan. He doesn't have that ring that Doug got, not as a head coach, and other guys too. Sean McVay for a while, and I know he got his ring, but then he got you saw him take a step back a little bit last year. Andy finally is getting his just flowers, I guess you can call it, after winning 2 Super Bowls in Kansas City. But for a long time, people didn't give Andy that respect. I wonder how much of that too is the fact that they were in Philly and people just kind of look at Philly and success there and want to downplay it. I don't know.
That's CJ Gardner-Johnson. Apparently he hates Eagle fans. So
he escaped a serious injury today. You see that news first?
I did. There's a lot of Eagle fans who were a little disappointed after what he said last week.
Yeah, you hear non-contact, you always think, ACL non-contact, and fortunately for him, apparently it's not that serious.
Yeah, fortunately for him and the Lions, unfortunately for Eagle fans who would love to see him get hurt at this point.
The Eagles fans better be careful not to wish ill on anybody, because they were so healthy. Like, part of Philly's success last year, Josh, this is how healthy they were able to stay. I believe in the Super Bowl, all 22 starters went into that, and you had your entire 22 starters in that game, and that's pretty rare. They were a very healthy team throughout the season, and you definitely don't want to root for anybody else to get injured, because that might bite you right in the butt there in Philly.
Yeah,
so be
absolutely. He's Rob Maaddi, at Rob Maaddi on Twitter. He's the AP lead NFL writer, baseball Hall of Fame voter, and he's the host of Faith on the Field, heard Saturday and Sunday mornings right here on 97.3 ESPN. Rob, keep up the great work. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you, buddy.
And of course, Rob appeared on the Elite Acura hotline. Visit Elite Acura during the summer performance event located on Route 73 North in Maple Shade, online at eliteacura.com. We'll get back to the text board coming up next. We got Shaner and EHT, your texts and more. Dan in EHT as well. 609-403-0973 and your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle.
Here's what you missed on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
It's not to say that it hasn't worked, because they're a lot better now than when the whole process became known to everybody with Sam Hinkie and everybody else. They said, trust the process. Joel Embiid is going to be the center point. That became his nickname. Exactly, yeah, and he lived up to it. I'm not leaning into hot sauce, but he leaned into the process because he knew it was either going to rise or fall based on his success, based on if he had failure with the Philadelphia 76ers. So I'm with you in terms of that, with the organization failing him, and yeah, there has to be accountability. But maybe we should have seen this coming, because that's what desperate organizations do. When they want to matter, they feel they have to matter. They want to matter sooner than later. And they have the process, but then they don't take time to see it through.
97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Matt Blatt Kia wants to give you independence. Yes, independence. Like freedom from down payments.
I got approved with 0 down.
Freedom from high interest rates.
I got 2.49% for 72 months.
Freedom from overpriced new vehicles.
I got $6,000 off MSRP.
But most important, freedom from your old car.
I was told I was stuck in my lease. Matt Blatt Kia got me released.
Low 2.49% financing up to 72 months on every new EV in stock and 0 down on every Kia in stock. Plus, get $6,000 off MSRP on every new Kia EV in stock. Finance your future, not your past. Even first-time buyers can drive with peace of mind with our exclusive 4-day love it or leave it return policy.
It's gotta be a Matt Blatt Kia.
With approved credit, not all will qualify. Go to mattblackkianj.com for complete details or 888-505-6670. Price includes all costs to be paid by consumer except for licensing, registration, and taxes through KMF, Kia Niro, and EV. 635 customer cash plus 2250 dealer discount off MSRP. Expires 8/5/23. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, and now on Route 37 in Toms River.
Staples has big savings on everything you need for back to school or stocking up the office. Save on signs, banners, and posters expertly printed by Staples Print and Marketing Services. Save on the latest tech and tech total support plans to keep your new or existing PC running right. Plus, save on all your back to school essentials from notebooks to markers. And right now at Staples, you can save even more with $10 off your in-store purchase of $50 or more. Get everything for the office and the classroom for less at Staples. N729. In-store only. Exclusions apply.
Where are we on the lineup?
It's official. Avery is producing Main Street Music Days.
We need to be ready. We're going to have lots of people. What's the status on the new sound engineer?
They need an audio technician to keep things level from sound checks to encores.
Make sure audio from one stage does not compete with another.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. Our hiring platform instantly connects you with quality candidates, and you can schedule and conduct virtual interviews right from the Indeed dashboard. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Ray Magliotta here for eBay Motors. Okay, easy now. You're teaching your kid how to parallel park. Ouch! Turns out he likes to do it by feel. Don't worry, eBay Motors has bumpers, taillights, trunk lids, license plate holders, 122 million parts. Pull up just a little bit. And headlights. They've got lots of headlights. Get the right parts at the right prices. eBay Motors. Let's ride.
Now your ideas don't have to wait. Now they have everything they need to come to life. Dell Technologies and Intel are creating technology that loves ideas, loves expanding your business, evolving your passions. We push what technology can do, so great ideas can happen right now. Find out how to bring your ideas to life at Dell.com. Welcome to Now.
With GMF financing to qualified buyers excludes Corvette, excludes fire sales.
This is it. The time has come for Bennett Chevrolet's biggest sale of the year. Bennett's Summer Sell Down Spectacular. First off, you get Bennett's exclusive GM supplier employee pricing on new Chevys. Yes, you pay what we pay, not a penny more. And unlike many other dealers, Bennett doesn't charge over MSRP. In fact, you can even get a new Chevy at thousands below MSRP. And there's available 1.9% financing. Looking for used? Our selection's never been better. Spectacular. Right now, Bennett is paying a record $10,000 minimum for any clunker towards any pre-owned in stock. That's a minimum 10 grand for any rat trap, any way you can get it to our lot. Imagine how much we'll pay for a good trade. Plus, Bennett Chevy's non-commissioned sales team is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. So there's never any hassles or pressure. July is jumping all month long at Bennett Chevrolet during our summer sell-down spectacular. Find new roads at Bennett and BennettChevy.com.
Or soar high on the rides. Enjoy iconic shores, history, and culture, from dazzling cities to charming countryside. Find it all at visitnj.org.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Don't forget Game Night being brought to you by Jenkins & Sons. One call does it all. 609-641-6440. Find out how you can save money with a new air conditioning system installed by Jenkins & Sons. Save money on your electric bill today. Call 609-641-6440 and visit them online at jenkinsandsons.com. It's the text as promised. Shaner and EHC, I want to start with him over at 609-403-0973. Shaner chimes in and says, I don't like that so many guys get in and so many don't, that brought the game back for many fans. Yeah, they did steroids, but they saved the game of baseball. So many people in the 80s and 90s did this stuff. I think it's because Rollins perceived as natural, as far as we know, that they give him favoritism. That's from Shaner and EHT. I think it's a great point by Shaner because, as Rob Maaddi mentioned, there's a lot of these guys who were suspected of steroids that Rob, looks at and says, hey, I got to vote for that guy. That guy's a great player. There's a perception out there that the use of PEDs made these guys Hall of Fame players. I think that's a huge lie. Guys like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, they didn't need the PEDs. They were great players before they ever took anything. It's just the PEDs allowed them to take their game from a Hall of Fame level to a greatest of all time level. They still had the talent and the ability. We act like Alex Rodriguez was a bad player, or David Ortiz or Manny Ramirez, that they were bad players, that they never took PEDs. I think the difference is that, like, Manny Ramirez, he doesn't hit as many home runs. Okay. Maybe A-Rod doesn't hit as many home runs. I think those are more likely scenarios than these guys not being great players. And I think Shaner's right, because Roland is perceived as being clean. He's treated differently. Dan and EHC chimes in and says, Scott Rowland should definitely be in the Hall of Fame. His greatness at third, was tremendous base runner. Jones should be in the Hall of Fame as well. He was greatness defensively. Dan and EHC goes on to say, I hate the Baltimore Orioles. 4 years ago, I was a 10-year-old and really remember that was the first Phillies team I loved in 1983. The Wheeze Kids, as they were called. Pete Rose, Joe Morgan, all the old dogs. Orioles beat the Phillies in the World Series. I need some payback. Well, Dan HT, hopefully the Phillies give you something this week. Can't help you too much with an 83 World Series. That was a very weird season in general. I think a lot of people have kind of overlooked the 83 team. That's why I'm glad the Phillies are honoring the 83 and 93 teams. You know, Ruben Amaro was joking on the telecast that he was a bat boy for the 83 team and he played on the 93 team. The 83 team was an odd team, though, because I know a lot of people remember the older players, but, like, for example, you know, the starting catcher on that team wasn't Bob Boone. It was Bo Diaz, for goodness sake. You know, the shortstop wasn't Larry Boa. It was, what, DeJesus, I believe it was. Like, that whole team was kind of like an odd collection of characters that got to the World Series. You know, I mean, for goodness sake, John Denny had more wins and a better ERA that year than Steve Carlton, for goodness sake. So I kind of always looked at, for me, I mean, as I was too young to, like, fully remember the team, but, guys like Ron Reed coming out of the bullpen and Willie Hernandez. It was just a very interesting collection of characters in many ways. Willie Hernandez won his World Series later on with the Tigers. People forget he was with the Phillies before he got to the Tigers. So, yeah, 83 is an interesting collection of players.
Health Update with Robin Stoloff, empowering you to live a healthier life.
Excessive temperatures can lead to heat cramps, heat exhaustion, or life-threatening heat stroke. Here's how we can protect ourselves and our families. Take breaks from the sun. Drink plenty of water from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. Limit alcohol and caffeine, which can dehydrate you and make matters worse. When exercising or doing another outdoor activity, try to do it in the early morning or late evening when temperatures are lower. If you're spending the day outdoors, be sure to wear a hat or a visor and stay under an umbrella or other shaded area. Symptoms of heat-related illness include headache, nausea, vomiting, muscle cramps, and fatigue. By taking a few precautions, we can protect ourselves and our families and enjoy the summer season. I'm Robin Stoloff for Health Update.
Health Update with Robin Stoloff, the longest-running health series in New Jersey, keeping you healthy since 1986. Nutrition, fitness, wellness, and daily tips to help you learn more, live better.